I actually lost control and completely went out into the field. Hey there, you're watching Car Stories with Matt. So this story takes place when I was 16 years old, and I was actually at the time daily driving the family's '88 Nissan pickup, and I was driving to high school in it every day. Actually, I went to school about 45 minutes away, and I drove there every day in that little Nissan truck, and I often would get creative coming home and take a bunch of back roads. And in Saskatchewan they have what is called the grid road system, and basically every square mile there's a road, and so like in either direction, north and south and east and west, there's just every square mile there's a grid work of roads. And so I used to take just random roads every day going home in my truck and just look for old cars and stuff. And you know, I actually found a few really unique old cars that I ended up rescuing and bringing home, but those are other stories. This particular time I was taking a series of back roads that I knew really well, but they were actually summer rated roads, and so they weren't maintained at all in the winter time, and this was in the middle of winter. And basically what a summer road is just a dirt road through a farmer's field. And so what happens in the winter time is the snow just drifts across the field and right across the road, and you get sometimes rock hard drifts from this, hard enough that you can actually drive a vehicle on. But as you know, if you watch the channel, I'm into off-road driving, and I always have been a bit. I've always played around with that. That truck was only two-wheel drive, but it did okay for what it was, and I used to play around on the back roads in the winter time quite a bit and plow through deep snow, and often I'd get stuck, but I always had a shovel with me, and sometimes I'd spend a couple hours just shoveling the truck back out and getting moving again. But you know, I didn't really stress about it, even though we didn't have cell phones back then or anything like that. Well, some people did, but I certainly didn't. And so I never really considered the possibility of getting stuck out somewhere and, you know, freezing to death. Anyways, this one particular time I was heading home from school on this series of back roads, and it was pretty bad. There was you know, snow drifts that were a couple feet deep, but I was plowing through them and just hitting them really aggressive, you know. And I came to this one set of them, and it started out with like a small one, but it was really sharp. And if you're familiar with Saskatchewan snow drifting at all, these particular snow drifts had the dirt on the peaks of them. When you get a really hard drift, it often will collect up with actual like dirt across the peak of it. It'll get really sharp, and it'll be brown on top. And if you ever see that, don't try driving through them, because they're too hard, and they will launch your vehicle. And that's exactly what happened to me. I hit that first drift, was probably about 10 inches high, and I hit it going about 30 kilometers an hour, and the truck just launched into the air, and it came down just in time to hit the next one, which was probably about 2 feet high. And I didn't get any opportunity to brake because I was literally in the air. And at the time, the truck actually had a canopy on it, like a truck cap on the back, a fiberglass one, and it was held on with those proper aluminum canopy clamps. I think there was 4 of them. There might have even been 6 of them. Anyways, the canopy actually flexed so much on these jumps that it pulled out from the clamps. And by the time I hit about the 3rd drift and launched the truck even higher for the 3rd time, I looked in the mirror, and that canopy was about 30-40 feet in the air behind the truck, just flying. Okay, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but like it was definitely up there in the air. When I looked in the mirror, it was way above the truck behind me, and I couldn't really stop. I had to just keep going through all of this, and I remember there was probably about 6 or 7 of these hard drifts, and then I got to a clearing where there was hardly any snow on the road, so I was able to stop and get out and assess the damage. And the truck itself took some damage too. Unfortunately, it bent the front body mounts. It came down so hard it bent the body mounts and crinkled up the front left fender, and it blew out the front left clearance light, and it cracked the grille. And trying to think, I think it messed up the sway bar end link too, but it never did any suspension or frame damage there. And so then I walked back and looked at the canopy, which amazingly was intact. Like, I would have thought it would have just broken half when it landed, but I guess it actually landed off to the side in some softer snow, so it kind of cushioned its fall. But there was no way I could get the canopy back on the truck. I didn't have the tools to retighten the clamps, and I just couldn't physically get it up there. And so I had to get out of there was the problem then. And I was kind of trapped because where I'd just come through, I mean, I'd come through at an insane pace. There's no way I could have just gently driven back out. I would have been stuck on the first bank. So my only option was to head out, and I did know this series of roads well, and I knew that I had an option coming up to turn left, or I could go straight through. And so I remember I came down and I went left first, because I knew if I went left I only had to go a mile over to the nearest main road, and if I had gone straight I knew it was about 3 miles to get to any sort of a maintained road. So I tried left first, and I only got about halfway down there, and there was like an impassable snowbank, like 4 feet deep. And so I had to go back down and go through the long way, through about 3 miles of totally unmaintained roads in the middle of winter. And it was honestly crazy. I wish I'd had a dash cam or something running back then, because I mean, it was do or die at that point. It wasn't even that I was worried about beating up the truck or anything at that point. Luckily, I didn't hit any more of those really hard drifts, because that area where I had hit them was kind of like a high area, so it was really wind whipped. But after that, I was kind of down in some lower laying land, so at least the snow was somewhat soft. But I mean, I was encountering places where the road was blowing in 2 feet deep, and I was just, you know, to the boards, probably doing 50, 60 mile an hour entering into these areas, and then just praying that, you know, I could maintain momentum until I got to the next clear area in the road, which there was a few times when that was pretty dicey. I'd be, you know, down to like 5 or 10 mile an hour by the time I was breaking out of this drift. And so I finally fought my way through all those snowbanks and did get back to the maintained road. And I remember when I got home, I walked in the door with my clearance light in my hand, my busted up clearance light, and I said to my parents I had a little incident. And so my dad jumped in the truck with me, and we actually drove back out the long way around on the good roads and came back into where those hard snowbanks started, where I'd lost the canopy, and we were able to load the canopy back on and tighten it all down, and that was all good. And now comes the kind of the, I don't know whether to be embarrassed about this or not, but at the time I was working in a auto body shop, and I had coverage on my truck that if I had hit wildlife there was no deductible, but if I hit a road hazard or something like I had, then there would have been a deductible on the claim. And so I had actually hit, about a week after this, I hit some Hungarian partridges. They're like little wild chickens that are common in Saskatchewan, and they actually hit on the same corner as I had the damage and did a little bit more damage. They busted out the grill and stuff, and so what I did is I processed this through as a wildlife claim and got a new grill and light through insurance that way, which you know, wasn't totally illegitimate. I had hit these birds and they had broken nose parts. They just had been previously broken from my little off-roading escapade. But I wanted to make sure that, you know, the fender was straight and the body mount was straight and stuff before I brought it in to be looked at. And so I was like doing this on my lunch hour in the parking lot, and I remember I walk back into the shop to grab a tool. My boss is standing there with this blonde lady and just talking to her, and I assume she was like a customer or something. You know, she wasn't dressed like anything special or whatever, so I'm just mouthing off to my boss that, oh yeah, I've got the insurance adjuster coming to look at my truck after lunch, so I'm just trying to straighten out the body mount before they get here. And my boss is like trying to shush me and stuff while I'm saying this, but I just, you know, ignore him and keep blabbing on. And then my boss goes, Matt, this is, I want you to meet the insurance adjuster. This is blah, 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 whatever her name was. And tried to, you know, casually introduce me to this lady who happened to be the insurance adjuster that would in fact be inspecting the damage on my truck. So she was really cool and just pretended like she hadn't heard anything. And when she looked at my truck, all was good. She put the claim through as wildlife damage, and I got my new parts, and all was good. But my family members still bug me a little bit about that. Oh, the Hungarian partridges. Anyways, I have always enjoyed spirited driving, and so there was a few summertime incidences on this very same back road. And I remember one time in particular, I came around the corner actually onto that short road I was talking about that ran over to the main road, that 1 mile strip of dirt there. And I came around the corner onto it and just really overcooked it. I was doing about 45 miles an hour around the corner, just in a big wild drift. And as I said, these summer roads luckily were level with the farmer's field, so I actually lost control and completely went out into the field, probably about 20-30 feet, and the truck actually tipped up on 2 wheels and just about tipped over because it was a freshly cultivated field, and it actually plowed up the loose dirt. And when I got out, there was dirt stacked up against the driver's side tires, you know, 3/4 of the way up the height of the wheel. But the truck was unscathed, and I was able to just back out and keep on going. And you know, I was already drifting again by the time I hit the next corner. That's just how I drove back then. So other than those times, I never actually wiped out in the truck. There was you know, a lot of times when I was just, you know, horsing around on the road and stuff and kind of lost control and it went off the edge a little. But you know, it's pretty flat in Saskatchewan and there's not much traffic, so at least back then and where I lived, you could get away with a lot of shenanigans like that. Thanks for watching Car Stories with Matt. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.